AITA for cutting off my daughter for humiliating me over her stepdad at Thanksgiving? Every year, Thanksgiving was the only holiday I insisted on keeping traditional. No matter how fractured the family might have been, no matter how much time or distance had crept between us, I always opened my doors. I wanted to believe that the ritual of gathering, of breaking bread together, might be enough to keep us united a little longer. My daughter Brooke had always been the center of attention during these dinners. I do not know if it was because she was the only girl, or because I spoiled her more than I ever admitted out loud. But she knew the spotlight naturally fell on her, and that evening, she grabbed it with both hands and a cruel smile. The dinner had already settled down. The plates were mostly cleared. The laughter had become more fluid, and the wine was doing its job of softening the cracks in everyone's carefully controlled masks. I was about to get up to refill the cranberry sauce when she stood up with that studied, confident grace her mother once had when we were still married. "I want to say something," she said, gently tapping her glass with a spoon. All eyes turned to her, including mine, even though my heart skipped a beat. Lately, she had been distant, colder, more transactional in her words. But I thought that maybe, just maybe, she was going to say something nice, something that would make all this worthwhile. "I want to thank everyone who has helped me so much up to now," she said with a sweet smile. Everyone applauded. I felt like I could breathe a little. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe she still saw me, still appreciated me. Then she added, far too nonchalantly, "Except the old man who calls himself my father. I wish he weren't." Laughter erupted around the table like a dropping plate. I blinked. I thought I might have misheard. Then she added, louder this time, "To be honest, I never respected him, and sincerely, I feel lucky to have a stepdad who is better than him in every possible way." The silence that followed was so sharp it could have drawn blood. Then awkward laughter started filtering through, as if people did not know whether they should laugh louder or look at me. But they laughed. Her husband was the one laughing the loudest. His face was flushed with amusement, as if she had just told the joke of the year. My sister Allison laughed softly and gave me a half shrug. It was as if to say, "Do not take it personally." I did not say a word, not even when Brooke sat back down with that smug little tilt of her chin, acting like she had just delivered a toast worthy of applause. I looked at her, and for the first time in my life, I did not see my daughter. I saw someone who had made a decision, a cruel and deliberate decision to humiliate me. And in that moment, I made a decision too. I did not slam my fist on the table. I did not raise my voice or leave the room with wounded dignity. I just sat there, cutting the last piece of turkey on my plate into smaller and smaller pieces. I was no longer hungry. I let the room run its course. I let the conversation continue. I even managed to nod at a joke someone made about the canned cranberry sauce. But my mind was no longer in the room. It was already in motion, calculating and untangling every financial thread that tied me to Brooke, because she had made it clear she wanted nothing from me. No name, no legacy, no respect. So she would get absolutely nothing at all. That night, long after everyone had left and the leftovers were packed away in aluminum foil and plastic containers, I sat in my office with a glass of bourbon I did not even want. I did not cry, and I did not ruminate. I simply pulled out the labeled folder. Inside were copies of her lease agreement signed under my company, a property that remained in my name. There were also her employment documents. She worked in the human resources department of one of my businesses. It was a comfortable setup I had arranged when she said she needed flexibility while her husband was finding himself. Everything, every inch of her comfort, was built on the foundation of my sacrifices, and she had disrespected it for a laugh and some attention. I picked up the phone and called my real estate agent first. "I want the Willow Creek house listed for sale immediately, and I do not care that it is the holidays. I want them out of my portfolio before Christmas." Then I called Human Resources. "Start the formal paperwork to terminate Brooke Thompson effective next Monday. I will sign whatever is needed first thing tomorrow." On both ends of the line, there was hesitation, unsure if I was speaking seriously. I was speaking very seriously. This girl wanted a life without the old man. She would get it, not in theory, not in teenage rebellion, but in action, in reality. And reality has bills, it has consequences. You do not mock the man who provides for you, and then expect nothing to change. I went to bed that night, and slept like a man who had finally stopped bleeding for someone who never brought a bandage. I did not flinch passing the framed photo of Brooke's college graduation in the hallway. I did not stop in front of the wedding invitation she had once proudly sent me. These things used to hurt me. She used to make me doubt myself, make me wonder if I was hard to love. But not anymore. Now I saw things clearly. You can love someone with all your soul and still know when that person is poison. And if they want to mock the hands that fed them in front of an audience, they can learn what it is like to truly go hungry. The next morning, I woke up before dawn, just like I did when the kids were little, and my workday started before the house came alive. It had been years since I felt that familiar rhythm, the clarity that comes with a decision that no longer steals your sleep. My coffee tasted better, stronger, more intense. The bitterness sat squarely on my tongue, and for the first time in a long time, I did not put sugar in it. I did not need to. There was something strangely purifying about dropping the act, about pretending she respected me, pretending she deserved everything I gave her, pretending this family was not held together with duct tape and denial. No more illusions. The truth had been spoken out loud at my own table, and now the truth would live with its consequences. I did not stomp through the house, slamming doors or shutting drawers violently like a wounded man. I moved with the kind of focus that only happens when anger has passed its boiling point and turned into something colder, something sharper. Determination. I pulled the thick folder back out of the cabinet, the one labeled in black ink and neatly marked with Brooke's name. Not my daughter, just Brooke, because she had reduced herself to that. A line item in my life, a dependent who thought mockery came without a bill. Inside the folder were mortgage statements, insurance records, and copies of the lease I had her sign when she and her husband moved into the house I owned in Willow Creek. I had been more than generous. I allowed them to pay well below market rate. I forgave late payments, and I even paid to fix the air conditioning last summer without getting so much as a thank you text. I looked at the paperwork and felt nothing. No guilt, no nostalgia, just facts. Cold, contractual facts telling me I was not the villain she painted me to be. I was a man who had provided and who was now done. By mid-morning, I was sitting in my downtown corporate office reviewing her human resources file. Her title was Administrative Coordinator, a position I created when she claimed no other employer wanted to give her a chance. They judge me for being too young, she used to say. They will think I am a spoiled brat because of my resume. She failed to mention that her resume contained nothing but internships I had secured for her and references who were mostly family friends. I had bent over backward to keep her on the payroll while she found herself. I let her work remotely. I let her leave early for personal development appointments that I later discovered were just yoga classes. Through it all, she still had the audacity to disrespect my name. I forwarded the necessary documents to Human Resources with a brief note. Initiate termination process, reason being role elimination, underperformance, and workplace insubordination. Position no longer required. I would not be questioned. The company was mine, after all. I built it from the ground up after her mother left, after deciding I would not let the divorce define the second half of my life. Every brick of this business was laid with sleepless nights, missed holidays, and lonely meals at my desk. And now she thought she could mock me, publicly disown me, and keep living off the legacy I had built. No, not anymore. Around noon, I received a call from the real estate agent I spoke to the day before. We can put it on the market next week, she said cheerfully. Holiday listings do surprisingly well, especially in that neighborhood. I told her the timeline did not matter to me, only that I wanted the house empty. Send the eviction papers today, I said. They will have 30 days. Make sure it is legal, airtight, with no room for delays. The pause on the other end of the line told me she was about to ask a question. Maybe something like, "Are you sure?" Or, "Do you want to wait until after the holidays?" But she did not. She must have heard it in my voice. That door had been double-locked shut. When I got home that afternoon, I sat in the car for a long time looking at the house where she grew up. I remembered the nights I helped her with her science projects. I remembered how she sobbed against my chest after her first breakup, the way she used to run into my arms when I walked through the door. And I let myself feel that pain for just a moment, enough to remember that I once loved her deeply, without question. Then I remembered that love is not a leash. Love, when it is one-sided, becomes slavery, and I was nobody's servant. Never again. I walked into the house and saw the framed photo still hanging in the hallway. Brooke in her cap and gown, her arms around me, a true and easy smile on her face. I took it down. I did not break it. I did not throw it away. I simply placed it face down in a desk drawer and closed it softly, not out of anger, but out of self-preservation. This was not about revenge, it was about peace. Creating a life where I was no longer a punching bag for someone who wanted my resources, but not my humanity. That night, I sat in the exact same chair she had occupied to mock me. I replayed the scene in my head. The arrogance in her voice, the ease with which the others had laughed, as if I were a sitcom character being roasted for the crowd's entertainment. I had provided the food, the stage, the setting, and she had used it as a theater to humiliate me. I had stayed silent out of dignity, but now silence had become my strategy. Let her find out day by day how much of her life was built on the very foundation she had disrespected. I knew the storm was coming. The calls, the panic, the begging. But I also knew this. I would not waver. For the first time in years, I was no longer acting out of guilt. I was standing on a principle, and I was ready. 3 days later, the knock came early. It was louder than usual, urgent, sharp. The kind of knock that does not wait for you to answer nicely. According to the property manager I hired through the real estate agent, Brooke opened the door with an expression of sleepy confusion, barefoot, her hair tied up in one of those messy buns she always wore when she thought the world owed her rest. She was wearing one of my old college sweatshirts, the one she used to steal from my closet as a teenager, acting as if the world were soft and nothing could ever change. The man in the polo shirt with the company logo handed her the envelope and said only one thing. You have 30 days. Inside the envelope were clear, indisputable eviction papers. The Willow Creek house was no longer her sanctuary, no longer a free launch pad. It was my property, and I had decided it was time for her to find her own way. According to the manager, her husband came downstairs a few seconds later, rubbing his eyes, phone already in hand. Is this some kind of joke? He asked, waving the papers as if they were on fire. You cannot just evict us. But he was wrong. I could, and I did. The audacity in his voice made me laugh when the manager told me about it over the phone. He had grown so used to my generosity that it had become an entitlement. He did not just accept my support, he demanded it. I did not answer. Brooke's first 3 text messages arrived one after the other. Dad, what is happening? Why are they putting a for sale sign in front of the house? She was panicking but still pretending to be confused, still playing innocent. But her voice, her real voice, broke when she called. I did not pick up. She left a voicemail. Her tone dropped to that familiar whine she used when she wanted something, but did not want to admit it. Hi, I am not sure what this is, she said, trying to sound calm. I think there might have been a filing mistake. Just call me back. I mean, obviously this is not what it looks like. She still did not understand. She still did not realize that her little Thanksgiving performance had burned the last remaining bridge. 2 hours later, her name buzzed on the office intercom. She had come to my building. Security called to confirm. Do not let her up. Send her to Human Resources, I said bluntly, without looking away from the spreadsheet in front of me. I could picture her in the marble lobby, her face flushed with frustration, realizing her access card no longer worked. She had probably come to beg, or worse, to blame me, maybe even to play the victim. But I no longer had the patience for masks or performances. Let her learn what accountability looked like without a family to cushion her fall. Later that afternoon, the Human Resources manager confirmed she had been handed the formal termination letter. She did not take it well. She cried, demanded to speak with me, and threatened to take this public, whatever that meant. She said things like, "This is personal. You cannot fire me over a family argument." But she was wrong again. She was never truly qualified for the job. The role had been created for her. There was no track record of performance to defend. It was not personal, it was just overdue. The company did not owe her anything just because she was my daughter, and neither did I. Not after what she did that night. My sister Allison called me. I recognized the tone before she even said a word. It was the peacemaker voice she used after family dramas. "Oh, hi," she said softly. "I talked to Brooke. She is very upset. I do not think she meant it like that." I almost laughed. She said I was not her real father. I replied calmly. In front of everyone. She said she wished I was not. There were a few seconds of silence, then Allison sighed. She was emotional. You know how she is. It was Thanksgiving and she was drinking. And I cut her off. And now she is homeless and jobless. It was her choice. Allison went quiet again. Are you really going to go through with this? She asked. Are you really going to lock her out? I looked out my office window. No, I said slowly. She locked herself out. I just made sure the door stayed shut. The repercussions started rumbling like distant thunder. Cousins called. Aunts sent guilt-tripping text messages. Is there anything we can do to mediate? One wrote. Family is a mess, but it is the only thing we have. I did not reply to any of them. Funny. Nobody said anything at dinner when she tore me down in front of everyone. Nobody stopped her. Nobody said, that is too much. But now, when the consequences were real, everyone wanted to play peacemaker. I was not interested. My silence at dinner had cost me something, but now my silence was the blade I yielded with quiet precision. By the end of the week, Brooke had moved out. Officially, according to the real estate agent, she left a literal and metaphorical disaster. Dented walls, scratched furniture, a few broken picture frames. I did not bother inspecting the damage. I told them to clean it, repair it, and list it above market price. I wanted that chapter closed and sold. Her husband posted a vague status online about toxic family members and holding grudges over nothing. I did not comment. I did not need to. The people who mattered already knew the truth, and the ones who did not? I was not going to waste another breath convincing them. That night, sitting alone at my kitchen table, I stared at the same chair Brooke had occupied every Thanksgiving since she was 6 years old. For a long time, I thought I was the one holding this family together. That my sacrifices, my silence, and my generosity were enough to glue the cracks. But now I saw clearly. Glue does not work when someone is actively chipping away at the edges. And love without respect is not glue, it is slavery. The Monday after she was fired, the office was quieter than usual. Or maybe it was just my perception, like how silence starts to ring louder when it comes from someone you have cut off. I walked the halls of my own company like a man who had finally stopped carrying the weight of another, and people noticed. My assistant Jessica did not ask directly about Brooke, but I saw the hesitation in her eyes when she brought in the morning report. Everyone knew. Office gossip travels fast, and nobody was surprised she got fired. What surprised them was that I, the man who had given her every possible advantage, had finally drawn a line and enforced it. Some respected it, a few called it cruel. I did not care. I did not ask for their permission to reclaim my dignity. It did not take long for Brooke to understand just how far-reaching the consequences would be. On Wednesday, I heard she had reached out to several managers she used to work under, begging them to put in a good word with human resources or even directly with me. None of them did. Most were never impressed with her performance to begin with and only tolerated her because they thought I demanded it. The moment they saw the leash was cut, they stepped aside and let her fall. One of the team leads even sent me an email thanking me for freeing up the spot for someone who actually wanted the job. I archived it for later. It was brutal honesty, and I respected it. She came back in person that Friday. Security warned me before she even reached the doors. She is demanding to speak with you, sir. She says it is urgent. I did not even look up from my laptop. Escort her outside, I said calmly. Document everything. If she makes a scene, file a report. I knew she would not leave quietly. She had grown up believing every no could be turned into a yes with enough drama. She had been trained, partly by me, to expect forgiveness like an endlessly running faucet. But forgiveness without remorse is not forgiveness. It is enabling. I had spent too many years confusing the two. That was over. I watched the security footage afterward. She was screaming in the lobby, her voice rising with every sentence. You are ruining my life, she yelled at the security guard. This is personal. This is illegal. She waved her arms and paced in circles, acting like the walls were closing in on her. I took no pleasure in seeing it. It was not revenge, it was reality. This is what happens when people believe they can disrespect those who raised them and still expect to drink from their well. The world does not work that way. Not in my world. That night, my youngest son Tyler stopped by unannounced. He had always been the quiet one, the observer. Where Brooke needed to be the center of every room, Tyler stayed on the fringes, watching. He did not often get involved in family conflicts, so I knew whatever he came to say was important. We sat on the porch, both nursing a beer, while the autumn wind blew lazily across the yard. In that moment, He looked older than his 25 years, tired in a way I had not noticed before. "I heard what happened," he finally said. I did not respond. I just nodded. "She is telling everyone you snapped for no reason. That you punished her for speaking her truth." I let out a short, bitter laugh. "Her truth. That I am not her father. That I am an old man worthy of mockery at my own table." Tyler shrugged. "I am not defending her. I am just saying that is what she is telling people, and I thought you should know." We sat in silence for a while. I could see he was thinking, turning something over in his head. Then he said, "For what it is worth, what she said did not seem funny to me. I saw your face when she said it. You did not deserve that." It hit me harder than I expected. I did not even realize how much I needed just one person, just one, to say it out loud. I looked at him and felt something shift. "Thank you," I said softly. I did not know if anyone saw it. "I felt it," he said. I nodded again. I felt it. That moment did not erase what Brooke had done, but it softened something inside me. Not toward her, but toward myself. For years I had doubted if I was too hard, too cold, too business-oriented in a house that demanded tenderness. But now I saw that the real damage did not come from my boundaries, but from not having enough of them. From letting her believe that loving meant never saying no, that money would always come with a safety net, that family was a shield against consequences. I had taught her that, directly or indirectly, and now I was undoing it, even if it hurt. Later that weekend, I got another text message from my sister Allison. She had been talking to Brooke behind the scenes. She sent me a long paragraph full of soft words and moral appeals. "She is your daughter," she wrote. "You only have one. What if she never comes back from this? What if you regret it later?" I did not reply. I did not have the energy to explain that this was not about a single incident. It was about years of digs and emotional manipulation wrapped up in a smile. It was a pattern I had ignored because she was my daughter, and that made it more painful, not less. People talk a lot about parental love as if it is unconditional, but I learned the hard way that unconditional love does not mean unconditional access. You can love someone and still protect yourself from them. You can mourn who they used to be and still not invite who they have become into your life. I had not stopped loving her, but I no longer trusted her. And that distinction, that razor-sharp line between love and tolerance, was the only thing keeping me sane. The voicemail came late, almost at midnight. I was sitting in the living room with the television on but muted. The room was lit only by the flickering glow of commercials. I was not watching anything. I saw the call come in, her name flashing on the screen just like so many times before. I did not answer. I had played this game before. The one where she cried and apologized without ever stating what she was apologizing for. I let it ring. A moment later, the icon blinked. New message. I did not listen to it immediately. I sat staring at the phone, wondering if it would bring closure or just reopen a wound that was starting to heal. After 5 minutes, I hit play. "Dad." Her voice was very low and shaky, as if she was forcing herself not to cry or trying hard to sound like she was. "I know you are angry. I know what I said was cruel. I was not thinking. I was just frustrated, okay? And there were people watching, and I got carried away. But," her voice broke a little, "this is too much. You took everything from me. The house, the job. You are being sentimental, Dad. That is it. You are letting your feelings ruin my life. Can we please talk? Please. You do not have to forgive me. Just do not destroy me over one night, please." Then there was a pause, a long breath. "I still love you. I am just not perfect. But neither are you." The message ended with a soft sob and a dull click. I stared at the phone for a long time. I replayed the message 2 more times. And there it was again, that word, sentimental. As if my reaction to being publicly humiliated and discarded like obsolete code was an emotional weakness. As if boundaries only existed to protect her, and when I utilized them, it was petty or dramatic. She did not understand the difference between consequence and cruelty. That was the problem. She still believed she was above it all. The next morning, I did not call her back. I also did not reply to the text she sent afterward. "Did you get my message?" "Yes, Brooke, I got it." I listened to every carefully chosen word, every shift in tone designed to make her sound small and misunderstood. But there was not an ounce of accountability in her voice. Only the discomfort of having her access revoked. She wanted relief, not reconciliation. And I was not going to give it to her. Not this time. That afternoon, I met with my financial advisor. We reviewed my estate plan, and for the first time in nearly 2 decades, I made serious changes. Brooke's name was removed from the primary trust. Instead, I allocated shares to Tyler, to my niece who was finishing law school, and to a few charities I had quietly supported for years. The advisor raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure?" he asked softly, fingers steepled beneath his chin. "My daughter," I interrupted. "My daughter has made her position clear. She does not want my name, my legacy, or my guidance. She can live without the rest of it too." On the way home, I stopped at a little diner, the kind I had not visited in years. Greasy counters, clinking coffee mugs, and the smell of burnt toast in the air. I sat alone. I ordered a black coffee and watched the world pass by through the window. Hurried people, talking, laughing. Nobody knew who I was, nor what had just collapsed in my life. And for the first time, that anonymity felt like a form of peace. For years, I had primarily been someone's father, someone's provider, someone's safety net. Now, I was just a man drinking coffee on a Tuesday, deciding which version of himself he wanted to be next. When I got home, the silence greeted me like an old friend. No missed calls, no new messages. Just me and the quiet. I walked down the hall and opened the drawer where I had stored the old picture of Brooke in her graduation cap. I took it out and looked at it. Her eyes, her smile, the way she leaned against me as if I were the center of her world. That version of her was gone. Maybe she would come back one day, maybe not. But I had stopped waiting for her. That was the difference. I missed her now, of course, but it no longer hurt. Not like it used to. Later that night, Tyler came by again. He did not say much. He just brought a six-pack and sank into the recliner as if he had always belonged there. We watched part of a game in comfortable silence, broken only by an occasional comment or a sip of beer. At one point, he turned to me and said, "I think you are doing the right thing." I did not ask what exactly he was referring to. There were too many possible answers, but I nodded anyway. "Yeah, I am tired," I said. "Tired of being the villain in a story I funded." He raised his bottle to peace. I clinked my bottle against his. To peace. It did not fix everything, but it made the room feel warmer. A few days later, Brooke published a long, vague post on social media. Something about family being fake, loyalty being conditional, and money changing people. I did not comment. I did not even finish reading it. Let her scream into the void if she wanted to. I had nothing left to defend. The people who truly knew me were not going to believe those half-truths, and the ones who did could stay out of my life too. That is what nobody tells you about boundaries. They do not just protect you from others. They also reveal who was only there because the door was always open. When you close it, you see who knocks, who walks away, and who tries to kick it down. She had done all three, and in doing so, she had made her choice. Thanksgiving arrived again before I realized how fast the year had gone by. The days had slipped away like dry autumn leaves, quiet, fragile, and without ceremony. It was the first time in decades that I was not hosting the big family dinner. No house full of noise, no folding chairs pulled out of the garage, no warm hum of conversation orbiting around Brooke's dramatic stories of minor inconveniences. This year, I chose something different. I only invited a few people. Tyler, my sister Allison despite everything, and an old friend named Mark who had spent the last few holidays alone. I told them I did not want anything grand. Just a quiet meal, honest company, no performances, no speeches. I cooked most of the dinner myself. Nothing extravagant. Roast chicken instead of turkey, mashed potatoes, green beans cooked with garlic the way my mother used to make them. Tyler brought a pie. Allison brought wine. Mark brought a story about the time he caught a squirrel trying to open his mailbox. It was simple, it was light, and above all, it was real. There was no tension vibrating under the tablecloth, no need to wait for someone to weaponize the center of attention. Just inconsequential laughter and silences that did not feel empty. For the first time, I realized that Thanksgiving was not about blood family. It was about peace by choice. There was a moment during dinner, right as we were getting seconds, when I looked at the chair where she usually sat. I had not left it empty on purpose. It was just sitting there, made of wood, with a little scratch on the edge from when she was 13 and tried to carve her initials during a tantrum. For a second, something stirred inside me. Not regret, not nostalgia. Something quieter. A kind of mourning. Not for who she was now, but for the version of her I had once loved so fiercely. The little girl who brought me handmade cards with glitter glue that stuck to my fingers. The teenager who, after her first heartbreak, cried against my chest as if I were the only solid thing left in her world. That version was long gone. I had simply refused to admit it. After dinner, Allison stayed a little longer while Tyler and Mark cleaned the kitchen. She poured us another glass of wine and leaned against the counter with softer eyes than I had seen from her in months. "You know," she said quietly, "I thought you were being harsh, I admit it. I thought it was a punishment. But you look lighter. Happier, even." I took a sip of wine, letting the words settle before answering. "I was trying to carry something that did not want to be carried," I said. And I finally realized that weight was not love. It was guilt. And guilt is not a good enough reason to let someone keep hurting you. She nodded slowly. "Have you thought about reaching out just once? Seeing if she has changed?" I looked her in the eye. "She changed before I did. I am just matching her energy now." Allison sighed, but not with frustration. It was a sigh of release, maybe even understanding. "Okay, I miss her too, you know," she murmured. "But I miss the little girl who looked at you like you hung the moon." I smiled faintly. "Me too. But that little girl does not exist anymore. And I cannot keep throwing lifelines to someone who mocks the hands reaching out to her." Allison did not push any further. She just hugged me before leaving, holding on a little longer than usual. Maybe that was her way of saying she finally understood. A week later, the house in Willow Creek officially sold over asking price. I saw the new owners pull up in a red SUV with their young kids, balloons tied to the side mirror. The mother was crying as she walked through the front door. I sat in the car across the street just long enough to see the lights turn on. The house had found a new life, a blank slate. I waited in a quiet corner of my heart for Brooke to find something too. Not comfort, not an escape, but the kind of perspective that only comes after enough doors close and the noise fades out enough for the truth to resonate. I heard she and her husband had temporarily moved in with his parents. That she was applying for jobs, even though the market was unforgiving. That some of the people who laughed that night were no longer answering her calls. It was never about revenge for me. It was about letting the world teach the lesson I had been too afraid to enforce. She had spent so much time assuming I would never leave, assuming blood would keep the engine running no matter how many times she slashed the tires. But love without respect is just stolen fuel, and I was done being drained. One Sunday afternoon, weeks after the house sold and the calls stopped, I took a walk through the neighborhood. The same path I used to walk when Brooke was little, when she rode her bike beside me asking endless questions about the clouds, the squirrels, the way the seasons changed. I walked past a young family playing in their front yard, their daughters laughing as they threw leaves into the air. The father caught one, spinning her in a dizzying circle until they both tumbled onto the grass. For a moment, my throat tightened. Not out of envy, but out of memory. That was us once. Pure, intact, and full of possibility. But time moves forward, and love, when it is not reciprocated, does not stay sweet forever. It hardens into distance, into caution, into choice. This time, I chose myself. Not out of spite, not out of bitterness, but out of survival. And as I watched the wind sweep the last few leaves into a swirling dance across the sidewalk, I realized something important. I did not regret my decision, not even for a second. When a father finally stands up for himself after years of disrespect, it is not revenge. It is self-preservation. I did not cut her out of my life to be cruel. I did it because I was done begging for respect. Comment: this story really stayed with me long after I told it. It reminded me how deeply important self-respect is in every relationship. Setting healthy boundaries isn't about being cold or unkind. It's an essential way to protect your peace and well-being. I've learned that we can love someone and still choose not to accept disrespect. Taking responsibility for our own happiness often requires difficult but necessary decisions. You truly deserve to be surrounded by kindness and mutual respect. Healing starts the moment we stop tolerating what hurts our hearts. I hope this encourages you to gently reflect on the boundaries in your own life. Choosing peace for yourself is one of the bravest and kindest things you can do. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.